there's some ayahs that were recited today that are really, really dear to my heart. Do we go over some of the ayahs that were recited today, which again will lead to what I was going to talk about maybe in a couple of days with regards to practical aspects. What do you guys suggest? What do you want? How many of y'all know how to do Salat al-Istikhara? How many of us know how to do Salat al-Istikhara? Oh wow. That's an overwhelming, not many. How many of us are married? How many of us, well, half of y'all want to get married, right? I'm hoping you guys want to get married, the ones that didn't raise your hands. How many of you plan on potentially opening up your own business, potentially, getting into a certain field or a certain area of work? Plan on buying a house, hopefully in a halal way. I've got the little kids on the stairs raising their hands, mashallah. Mashallah. Right. So based off of that, and sisters, you can go ahead and text in also what your preference is. But I do think if that's the case, and there's an overwhelming majority that haven't done Salat al-Istikhara before, let's go over Salat al-Istikhara, inshallah, and we will also go over some of the ayahs that were recited today, inshallah. Inshallah, bi'idhnillah. Suleiman, who's leading today? Abdurrahman? MashaAllah. Are you ready? Good. And who else? You are? What are you reading? We're going to be running out the masjid today because you're reading Surah Jinn. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let's go. Do you want to get the lights? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفر إنه كان توابا. Alhamdulillah, my dear respected brothers, sisters in Islam. Tonight, for some, it's the 27th night. For some, it's the 26th night. Regardless of whichever night it is, in terms of the number, it is a night within the last 10 nights of Ramadan. And accordingly, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has invited us into the masjid to worship Him. And if it is one of the nights, the night of Laylatul Qadr, then may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from us and allow the malaikas to enter inside of the masjid and give us that much desired salam. The ayahs that I've just recited and also the ayahs that were recited today in the Taraweeh Salah, subhanallah, have a very profound meaning. And today, the surahs that we went through, subhanallah, just imagine we were going through Surah Najm, we went through Surah Rahman, we went through Surah Al-Waqiyah, we went through Surah Hadid. And each and every one of those surahs, you can give, if someone wants to give a tafsir of those, you can literally sit for hours on end talking about each of the ayahs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed and for us to reflect on and to ponder upon. Imagine in Surah Najm, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about and talking to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when He's telling him, وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا هَوَى مَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُمْ وَمَا غَوَى وَمَا يَنْتِقُ إِنْ هُوَ عَنِ الْحَوَىٰ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is specifically saying that, O Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that you do not do anything. It is me that tells you what to do, and everything is inspired by Allah Rabbul Izzah Rabbul Alameen. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that allows Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam to know what is happening, what is being done, and even the secret ayahs that are given. You know, the huruf al-muqatta'at, the ayahs that are only between, the knowledge is between Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. When Allah says Hamim, Alif Lam Mim, Kaf Ha Ya Ain Sad, Qaf Sad. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is starting out with these, Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, they're the ones that have knowledge of this, and that knowledge is not with us. But subhanallah, when you think about that aspect, in how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was bestowing this knowledge into the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and bestowing it into his mind for him to dissipate this, for us to be able to receive it. And there are certain aspects that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has taught us. There are things that our beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam has taught us that we have to use in our daily lives. And then after Surah Najm, when Allah is talking about Surah Rahman, in Surah Rahman, the ayahs that are oft repeated. And subhanallah, in this juz, you have two surahs where there's ayahs of the Quran that are often repeated, where constantly Allah is sending a reminder. And subhanallah, when you come to Surah Rahman, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we all know this, everyone knows, where Allah keeps saying, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, constantly, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, that which of the favors of Allah Rabbul Izzah Rabbul Alameen are you going to deny? The favor of being able to live, the favor of being able to see, the favor of being able to smell, the favor of being able to hear, the favor of being able to speak, the favor of being able to walk, the favor of being able to grasp, the favor of being able to eat, the favor of the food digesting without you having to physically do anything for the food to digest. When the food has digested, for it to leave your body without anything for you to do except for you to go and sit down in a position for it to come out of your body. Ya subhanallah, which of the favors of our physical aspect are we going to deny of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you look at what Allah is talking about, the things that await for a person who is going to enter inside of Jannah, Al-Firdaus, Allah even talks about the two Jannahs, وَجَنَّتَيْنِ دَانٍ, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about those who are going to be granted the two gardens. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَرَفْرَفٍ خُضْرٍ وَأَبْقَرِيٍّ حِسَانٍ فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. And we see, unfortunately, I keep talking about this and I keep making fun of this, joking around about it, but it is something for us to actually think about the blessing that Allah has given of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because when Allah is talking about وَرَفْرَفٍ خُضْرٍ وَأَبْقَرِيٍّ حِسَانٍ, Allah is talking about those flying green carpets that you see in the movies with Aladdin. You know, that's the mode of transport when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about the green aspects, where he's talking about the gardens and all this beautiful aspect. What are we going to deny? The trees that give off the oxygen while we give off carbon monoxide. When we think about Allah's system, just the way Allah has created, and for anyone who ever has any doubt that there is an Allah, if it ever comes into your mind, I want you to come back and I want you to look at and understand the system that Allah has created. Can you imagine for there to be a cow? You know, some people that go vegan or vegetarian or whatever, or they're anti-animal and stuff. Subhanallah, there's a reason why the animals were brought down, and there's a system for that. For example, If there wasn't a perfect system, if there wasn't an ilah that created everything, then there wouldn't be any symmetry in everything. For example, a cow, it releases the most amount of carbon dioxide, releases the most amount of carbon dioxide. And that's why they're saying, oh, we need to stop eating animals and meat, not realizing that carbon dioxide is so important for us as well. But a cow, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the cow, and it has three different chambers. So when they eat the food goes into three different chambers. And if there wasn't one chamber there, then it would completely mess up the whole system, and the whole aspect of the earth and the atmosphere would be completely upside down. And Allah keeps reminding us, what of the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are you going to deny? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about creation, when He says, Kullu man alayha fan, that each and every one of us is going to perish. Everything. Kullu man alayha fan. When He says kullu, every single thing on this earth that is living is going to perish. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to raise us back up. And on that day, when He raises us back up, each and every faculty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, each and every asset that Allah has given us, physical, spiritual, the heart, the mind, everything, when it comes to the wealth that Allah gave us, the time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us, everything that Allah has given us, Allah is going to say, which of the favors were you able to deny in dunya? And what favors are you going to deny in this akhirah, on this day? On a day when just the eyes, the favor of the eyes, is going to have so much weight that a man who worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continuously, in one narration for 500 years, worships Allah continuously, and he's about to enter into Jannah, and the Malaika say, how lucky you are, how blessed you are, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is entering you into His Jannah by His mercy. And he says, no, it wasn't by His mercy. I worshipped for 500 years. I deserve this. And subhanAllah, they start arguing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls him back, and He says to him, do you really think you entered into Jannah, or you're going to enter into Jannah because of your worship that you did of mine? And subhanAllah, He says, just take one eye, not two, one eyeball. Put it on one side of the scale and put his good deeds and his worship on the other side of the scale. If your deeds outweigh the eye, you enter into Jannah. If not, you come back to me. And subhanAllah, immediately, zoop, it goes down. The eyeball completely outweighs this worship and good deeds that this person has been doing for 500 years. Ya subhanAllah. And then immediately he says to Allah, oh Allah, forgive me. Please enter me into your Jannah by your mercy, by your rahmah. Allahu Akbar. So which of the favors are we going to deny? The ability for, have you ever cut your nails too far? Have you clipped your nails too far? Ooh, that hurts. Man, that hurts. And you can't stop thinking about it. You're constantly like, oh, and you, no, man, this hurts. Even when you're in salah, even when you're doing something, you even think about taking a day off of work because I won't be able to type because my nail is cut too far. Yet, within 2 days, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grows that nail back, and you forget about the taklif that you were going through. You forget about the difficulty that you were going through. Have we ever given shukr to Allah and thanked Allah for even allowing that nail to come out? We have to really think about all the favors Allah has done for us. Everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us, we have to think about. And my brothers, sisters in Islam, I say this almost every single year in Ramadan. I am begging you, I'm imploring you, I am asking you, for for the sake of Allah, start to memorize the Quran. Make intention today. Don't wait for tomorrow. Don't wait for the next day. Don't wait for a year, or when you graduate from university, or when you do your A levels and GMC or GCMCs or GCSEs or whatever it's called. When you do this, or you get out of high school, or I'm going to take, no. Make niyyah, you're going to memorize the Quran starting tonight. Don't even wait for tomorrow to come. Make niyyah. Because if you make the niyyah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَّا نَوَىٰ, that you will be rewarded based off of your intention. So if you make niyyah of becoming a hafiz of Quran, can you imagine on the day of judgment, if you pass away and you had that niyyah and you started even by memorizing half an ayah or an ayah of Quran a day, which would take you 15 years to memorize, if you were doing one ayah a day, or 20 years to memorize, subhanallah, you will be raised from amongst those who were huffaz based off of your niyyah. I'm giving you a life hack. I'm giving you an akhirah hack. You will be raised, and that's why you have the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he talks about the daraja, the one that whose daraja is going to be raised. The Hafidh of Quran is going to be brought in front of everyone. And then he's going to be told, now you stand. He's going to be given beautiful garments. And then subhanallah, their mom and dad, your mom and dad, imagine they're going to be on your right and your left hand side. They will have a beautiful crown of nur placed on top of their head. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to order you, and He's going to say, Iqra, now read. Now read the Quran. And then you're going to start. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Now if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes you read in the order of revelation, because Allah can do that if He wants, you're going to start with اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم. Or if it's in the manner in which we have it in the kitab form today, you will start out Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And every ayah you read, zoop, you go up one level. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, another level. Maliki Yawmiddin, next level. Until you have stopped reciting 6,660 odd verses of the Quran. That means there are 6,660 levels that you can climb up into Jannah. And guess who's climbing with you? Your mom and your dad. The ayahs say, وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ وَحْنًا عَلَى وَحْنٍ وَفِصَالُهُ فِي عَامَيْنِ أَنِ اشْكُرْ لِي وَلِوَالِدَيَّ إِلَيَّ الْمَصِيرُ. That, we explained those ayahs. I'm not going to go into the details. But the mom that went through difficulty upon difficulty. The hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that said, you can carry your mother on your back for the rest of your life, but you will never be able to repay her for that carrying that she did for the 9 months that you were inside of her womb. You can never pay her back for that. But subhanallah, what an amazing gift you can give to your mom and your dad on Yawm al-Qiyamah, that you're reading Quran. They have a crown of light, of nur that is placed on their heads. They're on a throne-like chair, and they're just climbing and climbing and climbing with each of the ayahs that you are memorizing. And if any of us have any doubt that whether I can memorize the Quran or not, then the surah that comes after that is Surah Waqiyah, but then after Surah Al-Waqiyah, subhanallah, you have where, before Surah Rahman, you have where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is constantly repeating, وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. And subhanAllah, I was just telling Mufti Sulaiman, when I was memorizing, I'm going to give you a personal story that I don't tell many people. When I started memorizing, I felt as if I was never going to finish, forget the whole Quran. I was stuck on Juz' Amma. I get on Juz' Tabarak, then I kept forgetting and I couldn't do my Dawr. I kept forgetting. Then my Ustad, he said, let's try Surah Baqarah, let's try the longer ayahs. Maybe you'll learn the longer ayahs. And subhanAllah, I just kept forgetting. And I just couldn't memorize. So my teacher, we went into an ijtima, a gathering, an Islamic gathering. And when we were in the ijtima, when you're out in khuruj, when you're out, in Jamaat, subhanAllah, they have this thing in the morning where you recite the 10 surahs from Juz' Amma, the last 10 surahs from Juz' Amma. In order for you to be able to perfect, for you to be able to read one surah in every rak'ah, because the maximum amount of fard and sunnah that you're going to read in one time is salat al-dhuhr, which equals 10 rak'ahs, right? And subhanallah, they teach you the 10 surahs so that you can read a different surah in each rak'ah. And I'm sitting there reading. Now granted, I'm in madrasa. And I start making mistakes in those 10 surahs. And an uncle made fun of me. And sisters, brothers, with your children, it is so important. It is so important to be mindful in what you say to your children, and even teachers and people that are in charge of masjids. It is so important to be careful with what you say, because you can destroy someone. An uncle says to me, "You're so stupid, you'll never become a hafiz." And I'm just sitting there. I'm a kid. I'm 10 years old. And I hear this. And I broke down crying. And that night, I sat down. I was upset. The whole day goes by. I'm just secluded. I'm not talking to anyone. And that night, I decided I quit. And I'm not going to memorize. And then the time they woke people up for tahajjud, and I was praying tahajjud, and I had my little blanket, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to tell my dad I quit. And I was the one that asked my dad to become a hafiz of Quran. I wanted to memorize. And I asked my dad. And subhanAllah, I'm bawling my eyes out. As a young kid, little kid, I'm bawling my eyes out. And imagine, it left such an impression that I remember this vividly. And subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when I fall asleep, I saw in my dream, I'm sleeping, in my dream I'm sleeping. And this old man, like ragged, like clothes that were like ragged, you know what I mean? Like not, fully ironed and stuff. And this old man with a long white beard comes and he sits at my head. And the whole time, now remember, what juz did I say I had memorized? 30th, 29, and half of the first juz. Okay? I haven't gotten to the 27th juz. And this man, he comes to me and he's sitting over my head while I'm sleeping. And he kept reading. وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. And I remember seeing this dream, and then I remember waking up in the dream and looking at the man and saying, "What are you reading? What are you saying? who are you? And he says to me, he says, if you don't leave me, I promise you I will be with you when you will need me the most. And I said, what are you talking about? Who are you? And he said, if you don't leave me, I promise you I will not leave you when you will need me the most. He says it a third time. And after that, I woke up. I had no idea what had happened. I didn't understand. I don't even know this is an ayah of Quran. But I remembered the words. And I went to my teacher and I said, Sheikh, I just woke up and some man came to me in my dream and he kept saying these words in Arabic. And my ustad started crying. And he said to me, he said, what's going on? And I said to him, I said, nothing. You know how kids are. I said, nothing's going on. And he said, no, something's going on. And when did you memorize this ayah? I said, I don't know, Sheikh, I've never read this ayah. I'm still in the 29 juz and the half of the first juz. And subhanAllah, my teacher, he said, whatever you do, Firoz, don't quit memorizing the Quran. And he said, one day you will realize what this ayah means, and you will realize what the old man was. And inshallah, he will be with you till you pass away, and even on the day of judgment. It wasn't until after, when you finish memorizing Quran, they do Dasar Bandi, and then you go through the graduation process, and you do the Alim course, and then they do a Bisht and the Dasar Bandi and stuff. The Dasar Bandi is a tying of the turban, and that's why I always wear the turban, to remind me that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can always take the ilm of Quran and can take my ilm from me at any time. And that's why I always like to tuck it. But I was going through a hadith when we were going through Alim class. And there's a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that said that the one who's engaged in Quran, the one who's engaged in reciting the Quran constantly, when he passes away, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he passes away and he wakes up in his grave and he wakes up on Yawm al-Qiyamah, there will be a companion that will come, that will be like a shadow with you. And you're going to be like, well, who are you? Why is there a shadow next to me? You'll kind of freak out. And this will be a person in the form of an old man or an old woman for the sisters. It will be in the form of an old man. And then the slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask, who are you? And then he will say, do you not recognize me? I was young when you engaged with me. But because you constantly were with me and you were constantly using me, I have become old, but I am still your companion. And that will be the Quran. Can you imagine? Your companion will be the Quran. Whose words are the Quran? Whose words are they? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If my companion is the Quran on Yawm al-Qiyamah, who is my companion? Who is my protector? Who will stand for me? Allah Rabbul Izzah Rabbul Alameen will protect me. In a very long hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, and I say this often in my khutbahs, in the Arabic khutbahs, where he says, At-tuhur shatrul iman walhamdulillahi tamla'ul mizan wa subhanallah walhamdulillahi tamla'ani wa tamla'hu lahu ma bayna as-samawati wal ard. But then he says, As-salatu nura wa sadaqatu burhanun wa sabru diya'un. In another hadith it says, Wasiyamu diya'un. But then one of the most important parts of that hadith is where Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says, وَقُرْآنُ حُجَّةٌ لَكَ أَوْ عَلَيْكَ, that the Quran will either be a hujjah for you or against you. It will either stand with you as a protection for you, or it will be something that will be a witness against you. And my brothers, sisters in Islam, the Quran is such a book, it is such a letter, a khat, that has been written directly and verbally delivered to us, physically formed, sent to us by Allah Rabbul Izzah Rabbul Alameen, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this book, and He keeps telling us the meaning of that ayah is وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. I have made this book, I have made this Quran easy for you to learn. فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. So which of you is going to take this? So who from amongst us is going to take this? And the greatest gift that one can be given is to be able to memorize the Quran, to be able to turn to the Quran, reflect upon the Quran, and go back to the Quran and deal with the Quran whenever you have any situation. You turn to the Quran and Allah will make a way out for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of you. There is shifa inside of the Quran. And if any of you are struggling in memorizing the Quran, I can be witness that the Quran, though it may seem hard to memorize in the beginning, when Allah opens the doors, when He opens the bab of rahmah, when He opens the doors of hifz, when you know what a hafidh is? A hafidh is someone who is a protector of the Quran. When people ask, have you memorized the Quran? Yes. Are you a hafidh of Quran? Not yet. Why? Because until I don't have the Quran and each of the ayahs embodied inside of my life, I have not protected the Quran within myself. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala get us to that state. But if you're struggling to memorize the Quran, if you've ever had the desire to memorize the Quran, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was 40 years old when he started to become a hafidh of Quran, when he started to memorize the Quran. He was 40 years old. He was 63 when he became a hafidh of Quran, because the last revelation was given in the final year of his life. He was 63 when he became hafidh of Quran. There should be no excuse for any of us not to memorize the Quran and not to connect with the Quran. Each and every one of us must be affiliated with the Quran and memorizing the Quran each and every ayah every single day. It's not hard. And you'll get to a point where when you're reciting the Quran and you're memorizing it, you will start with one ayah. And then eventually you'll get to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And sometimes you may even get to a point where you're memorizing pages at a time. But it all requires starting. It all requires starting. Pick up the Quran and start memorizing it. We memorize from the back, the Juz Amma. Once you've got Juz Amma and Juz Tabarak memorized, start with the first Juz. And then start going through. It's easy to memorize the Quran. And I'm sorry, I was supposed to talk about Salat al-Istikhara. You're going to have to come tomorrow, inshallah. But, subhanAllah, it's easy to start memorizing the Quran. The methodology of memorizing the Quran is so easy. You take an ayah, you read the page, you take a lesson that you're going to do. Take 2 or 3 lines. If you're not proficient in reading the Quran in Arabic, if you're slow in reading the Quran in Arabic, take 1 ayah. And then when you've got the ayah of Quran, if it's a long ayah, break it up into 4 sections. But repeat the recitation constantly. For example, if you're going to read an ayah, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida. Okay? And then it carries on with وَيُصْلِحْ لَكُمْ أَعْمَالَكُمْ وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ وَمَن يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَقَدْ فَازَ فَوْزًا عَظِيمًا. But just take that. Break it up. Ya ayyuhalladhina. But first, you read the ayah constantly. If you're reading, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida. If that's how you read, keep repeating it up until you get to the point where you say, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida. Also, another trick that I'm going to give you, don't spend time trying to sound pretty when you're trying to memorize the Quran. Many times, students of mine will try to be like, Ya ayyuhal... No, no, no. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا. The Quran, the way it's been revealed and the manner in which the words have been revealed will automatically make you sound good. You can have the worst voice in the world, but the Quran and the rhythm that it's revealed in will automatically make you sound good. And then once you've got it proficient in reading the ayah, then what you do, you break it up into four. يا أيها الذين يا أيها الذين يا أيها الذين يا أيها الذين يا أيها الذين. Close the kitab, close the book. And then يا أيها الذين يا أيها الذين يا أيها الذين يا أيها الذين. Once you've got it down, then you come up and then you get to the next part, right? So you start with يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله آمنوا اتقوا الله آمنوا اتقوا الله آمنوا اتقوا الله. Close the book. آمنوا اتقوا الله آمنوا اتقوا الله آمنوا اتقوا الله. Then once you've got it and it's memorized down, start from the beginning. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله. Read it at least 10 times. Open the Quran back up. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته حق تقاته حق تقاته حق تقاته. Close the book. حق تقاته حق تقاته. Then go back to the beginning. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته. Once you've got that, go to the next portion. And then when you've got the whole ayah memorized in that manner, read that ayah again another 10 times. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Repeat that until it's down. Then you move on to the next ayah. Then, once you've done that with the next ayah, go back to the first ayah. Read that, and then the next ayah, read it 10 times, especially at the joining point. Do it until you've got it down and it's fluid. Then, because a lot of huffaz, a lot of people that memorize, quickly forget. Now you have two more things that you need to do to make sure that you've got the Quran down packed before you set on the musalla and recite it. Then, when you pray your sunnah, or you pray your fard salah, or your nawafil salah, you read those ayahs that you have memorized in your salah. In your salah. If you make a mistake in it, guess what? It's your salah. You can then finish the salah, go back, reread, and learn again. And then, once that's done, the second thing you do is go find your mom or your dad or your brother or your sister or a friend and say, hey, by the way, I'm going to teach you this ayah. Why don't you learn this ayah with me? And then you teach the ayah to someone that doesn't have the ayah memorized, because you know what happens? This is where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he talks about the person who learns the Quran and teaches the Quran. Man ta'allama al-Qur'ana wa 'allama. Right? The one who learns the Quran and teaches the Quran, because Rasulullah sallallahu teaching you that you need to teach the Quran. So you teach the Quran and then it stays with you again. Now, last step. When you're with your boys and your friends, don't be scared that you're going to make a mistake and read those ayahs in Fard Salah, whether it's Maghrib, Isha, or Fajr. And then you come tell me that you're having difficulty in memorizing the Quran. And I'll be like, you ain't doing it right. Because if you do this and you follow this methodology, Inshallah, all of us here will become those that have completed the memorization of Quran. And inshallah, one day we will all become hafiz of Quran, where we implement the Quran in our life and we live the Quran the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted us to do it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us all become hafiz of Quran. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also allow us to become those that implement the Quran. And I know some of you may think that, oh man, this is boring. Why are you teaching us how to memorize the Quran? That means you don't have the love for you to actually want to memorize the Quran. If you're getting bored, if you're not getting bored, then that means you really want to memorize the Quran. And if you're not wanting to memorize the Quran or you don't have that zeal for it, I'm sorry. Change your niyyah. Because the greatest gift that I was given is the Quran. They have those 7 wonders of the world, and they talk about all these creations. My wonder of the world is the Quran and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Those are my wonders of the world, because that's all I need in this world. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us from amongst those whom He is very pleased with. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us all to become hafiz and alim of Quran, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from amongst those whom He is pleased with. Let's go ahead and salawat Sulaiman, your boys are ready. You and Abdurrahman, you ready? What are you reading today? You're reading Surah Nur? Ooh. You got it down? Inshallah? Okay. You know about the end, right? You know what Surah Nur talks about in the end? Huh? I'll tell you afterwards. Inshallah. Inshallah. Bismillah. Right. So we do. I know we've been not doing it for the last 2 days. We'll do 100 salawat upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam based off of the hadith that we've already gone over and the tafsir of the ayah. Inna Allah wa malaikatu yusalluna ala nabi. We will pray 4 rakahs today. Brothers, sisters, if you see a wire falling down while Hafiz Suleiman is reciting Surah Jinn, there is no jinn in the building. Let me make that clear. Remember, they're tied up, right? And don't get scared, subhanAllah, inshallah. So we're going to do the salawat, and then we're going to do the Qiyam al-Layl, and then we'll close it off with a quick dua. If we have enough time, we will pray rakatain of our own as well, and then we'll go home, and then we all have to come back for Salat al-Fajr, inshallah. لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم 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 لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم 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 لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم 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 لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا وعلى آل سيدنا. Hufaz, in the front row, please. Ulama, Hufaz, please come in the front row. And then